Hey y'all, welcome to Pleiadian Point of View. I'm Peyton, and I'm a Pleiadian channel and starseed coach. So in today's video, we're going to be doing an in-depth tutorial on the P's favorite energy tool. So if you have listened to any of my videos, something that you have heard me talk about over and over again is what the P's refer to as getting in your heart. This is their mantra. They talk about this all the time. So today we are going to go through the mechanics of this tool. We're going to do a little tutorial to teach you exactly how to do it, because this is really one of the main things you can be doing right now to stay on your highest timeline. I can't tell you how important this is, but I know that so many of you have heard me reference this tool, and in some past videos we went through how to do it, but I get so many questions on how do I do this? Is this working? That thought we should take a little closer look at it. So in today's video, we're going to be going through all the nuts and bolts of how you actually do this. But before we jump into talking about this tool, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button if you haven't done that yet. Now, what are we talking about when we talk about getting in your heart? Well, a simple way to look at this is it's an energy tool. It is a process or a technique that shifts your consciousness. And this is something that the Pleiadians talk to us about all the time. They are constantly encouraging us to get in our heart. So today they're going to walk you through exactly how you do that. Now, before we jump into the nuts and bolts of this, how this process actually works, the first thing that it's important to understand is the why. Why should you do this? Because the why is going to give you the inspiration to actually work on it, to actually make this part of your daily practice. Because here's the thing, y'all. This tool is so simple when you hear it. You're going to be like, oh my God, no problem. I've got it. I'm doing it. This is one of the hardest things to actually master. This is something that people spend a lifetime trying to master. So understanding it, super simple. Actually doing it, a whole nother ballgame. So today we're going to talk about the process for doing it. I'm going to actually walk you through step by step. How do you do this? Then we're also going to talk about how do you know if you're doing it properly? Because this is one of those tools that you can be thinking you're doing it right, only to find out that you haven't been, in which case you're just wasting a lot of time. So we're going to talk about how do you know if you're getting it right? Because it is really important to make sure that you're doing this tool properly so that you're not just wasting your time. So before we jump into talking about this tool, let's talk for a little bit about the why. Why should you do this? What is the point of this? And why do the P's yap at us about it all the time? Well, there are several things that happen as you use this tool. It is more than just a nice meditation, a relaxation technique, although it will function that way for you. But this simple little tool actually accomplishes many things at the same time. So one of the first things that happen as you get into your heart, and sometimes you'll hear me refer to this as anchoring in your heart. It means the same thing. So as you do this tool and start to get in your heart or anchor in your heart, the first thing that happens is you drop out of the 3D operating system. You drop out of the ego mind. And the ego mind, of course, is that operating system that most of us knew for most of our life. It was how we operated. But the ego keeps us in separation. It separates us from our higher self, from our multidimensional abilities, from all of those skills and gifts and talents that we're so excited in the spiritual community to be connecting with again. Well, the ego mind cuts that off. So what we want to be doing as ascending humans is starting to reconnect with our multidimensional self. And the way you do that is by anchoring in the heart. You have to switch operating systems because as long as you're in the mind, as long as you're thinking, your mind-body system is designed to block out multidimensional knowledge. That is what it was designed to do. It had to function like that to let us have the 3D experience. So now that we are moving beyond 3D, we have to move beyond the 3D operating system. And the way we do that is by anchoring in the heart. So the first thing that happens as you start to use this tool to anchor and set your consciousness in your heart is you get out of the egoic structure. You bring yourself into a powerful portal. The heart is a powerful portal for connecting with the higher part of yourself, for connecting with the higher realms and dimensions, for connecting with your star family, for connecting with the quantum field itself. It all happens through the heart. So if you are not seated in your consciousness, in your heart, you can't do any of that stuff. You just can't. The ego mind will block it out. So that's one really important reason why it's so important for us to be anchoring or seating ourselves in our heart. Now, another really important thing happens as you start to learn how to seat yourself in your heart, and that is you start to dissolve any of the negative programming that you're holding. So all of those negative beliefs that you've picked up over this lifetime and many others, all that social programming you've picked up from your family, your friends, your education, your culture, just life on earth. All of those limiting programs start to dissolve as you start to seat yourself in your heart. You actually start to dissolve the negative imprinting on your multidimensional energy. And so what happens is you start to release everything that's holding you back. Gotta happen from the heart. This cannot be done from the ego mind. The P's always love to say, you can't fix the mind from the mind. So this is another one of those reasons why it's so important for us to be seating ourselves or getting in our heart. Now, something else really important and really cool happens as you start to seat yourself in your heart, and that is you start to bring online the higher dimensional aspects of yourself. So if you are someone who has been really excited to start opening up your intuitive abilities, open up your telepathy, open up your clairvoyance, your clairaudience, your ability to channel, to connect with your star family. You do that by anchoring in your heart. Because again, as you start to shift your consciousness from the mind to the heart, you start to open up to everything that has been cut off from us as we had this 3D human incarnation. So the ticket to getting out of the matrix and all of the separation and limitation that it brings is just to get in the heart. A shortcut to everything you're trying to do is just to get in your heart. So all these things start to happen as you do this simple process. And this process that we are talking about is just a matter of shifting your consciousness, literally shifting where you are sitting in your body. Because most of us, as we go about our daily life as just normal humans, we're in the mind. We just are seated there. That's why if you were to close your eyes and just think about where am I in my body, for most of us, the answer is going to be in the head, right? That's just where we tend to operate from. So that means that your consciousness is seated in the mind. And there's nothing wrong with this. Whenever we talk about these two systems, we are not saying that there's anything wrong with being in the mind, but it gives us very different results. So as we start to shift where we are seated in our body into our heart space, we bring online this whole new assortment of gifts, abilities, access to multidimensional knowledge and wisdom. It all happens when we shift our consciousness or where we are, you can think of it, in our physical body. So that's another reason why getting in your heart is such an important tool for us to be mastering right now. Now, another great thing that happens as you seat your consciousness in your heart space is that you drop out of resistance. You drop into neutrality. Because as you enter your heart space, as you actually seat your consciousness in your heart, you actually drop out of the 3D matrix. Again, that's what we're trying to accomplish as ascending humans, is getting out of the 3D matrix, which is all about the mind, right? So as you start to seat your consciousness in your heart space, you actually start to dissolve your connection to the 3D matrix. So another really important reason why this is such a critical tool for us to be using right now. So what happens as you start to practice this tool of seating in your heart is you start to get very good at neutrality, because whenever you are seated in your heart, you are in the present moment. And we've heard the P's talk over the years how important that is, to not be in the mind, which likes to spin us back into the past, telling all those horror stories of things that have happened to us in the past, or it likes to shoot out in front of us, right? To start envisioning the future. And a lot of times that puts us in fear, right? So one of the other great things that happen as we start to anchor our consciousness in our heart is that we come into the present moment. And everything happens in the present moment. So the more we seat ourselves in the heart space, the more we are anchoring on our highest timeline. Because of the simple fact that being in the heart takes us out of the mind. And the mind is where all of our limiting beliefs are. And honestly, y'all, it is only the ego mind that keeps us from being in 5D this instant. It's just the mind. So this is the tool that helps us start to break ourselves out of the 3D matrix, which is just about separation, right? It was a game we were playing, but for most of us, it's a little tired. We're kind of done with that. We're over it, and we are ready to move on to the next level of consciousness. The way we do that, we've got to be seated in the heart. So these are some of the things that are actually happening as you do this process of getting in your heart. So it's not just a little exercise that we do. It's not just something that the P's love to talk about, and they do. It is many important things are happening as you do this tool. So now let's move on and talk a little bit about how you actually do it. What are the mechanics of this? Because when you hear this tool, you're going to think it is the easiest thing you've ever heard. When I first heard this, I was like, there is no way that is going to do anything. It's way too simple. And understanding the tool itself is that simple. It is going to be super easy. The challenge comes in when you actually execute it, because it is super easy to pop into your heart. It is a whole nother story when you try to stay there, because here's the important thing that happens as we start to use this tool. That is, the ego mind is gonna hate it. The ego mind is going to fight back with everything it has to keep you from anchoring in the heart. So why does this happen? Why do we tend to get so much ego pushback when we start to anchor in the heart space? Well, as we know, the ego mind is all about control, right? The ego mind likes to run the show because it always has. So when it sees that we are starting to anchor our consciousness in the heart, it feels very threatened because it knows it's about to lose its job. So as you start this practice of using this exercise of centering in your heart space, always expect your ego to put up a bit of a fight. Now, this fight can take many forms. So the ego likes to play kind of dirty. So one of the first things that you may notice as you start to do this process that I'm about to describe to you is that the ego mind starts to get very chatty. So you may find as you're trying to do this that your mind gets very active. That you start thinking about everything that you have to do. You start going over your grocery list and your agenda for the week. And this is very common. This is a sign that your ego is trying to prevent you from doing this. And it will. Now, exactly how the ego is going to act out is going to look different for all of us. One of the ways that my ego used to mess with me when I was starting to learn this process is to start to tell me that this is a waste of time. What are you doing just sitting here? This isn't doing anything. What is the point of this? Shouldn't you be doing A, B, and C on your to-do list instead? So the ego mind is going to try anything it can to keep you from doing this, for the simple reason that once you anchor in your heart, the ego mind is out of a job. It loses control over you. And it is not crazy about that. So one thing it's always very important to know, because I was a little unprepared when I started learning this, for how much kickback I was going to get from my mind. So just know going in that that's part of the process. And be gentle with yourself. We never want to get into an argument with the ego. That's what the ego loves, is for you to start arguing with it, right? It will do that all day long. So if you just know that as you start to do this, if you start to get a lot of that negative mind chatter, it's part of the process. So one of the best ways to deal with that, and it's going to look different for each of us as to what exactly the ego throws at you, but be prepared for it to throw something. But as it starts to have its temper tantrum, just send it love. This is just part of you that is resisting moving into higher dimensional energies. And we want to love every part of ourselves, even those parts that are giving us a little bit of grief right now. So it's very important as you go into this little process to just be expecting there to be some mental pushback. Now, you may also notice that there's resistance in the physical body as you start to use this tool. So you may notice that you start to hold tension in the body, that you get a little spasm in one of your muscles, or you feel that tightening in your neck or your shoulders or your lower back. So your mind-body system may use your physical body to push back with this. So if you just know going in to expect a little bit of egoic pushback, then you're going to move through it that much more easily. So that's something that you really want to kind of be aware of as you start to learn and practice this tool. So how do you actually do this? How do you shift your consciousness into your heart space? Well, I tend to use a really simple meditation to do this. So as you're playing around with this, I encourage you to start doing it in meditation because doing this is a very subtle process. So if you are doing this as you are going about other things, trying to multitask, you're probably not going to have enough focus to make this work. So as I said, this is something that is going to sound super simple, but it's actually really difficult to do it properly. So it's a great idea as you're starting to practice this tool to do it from meditation when you have 100% focus. Because we like to say in energy work, everything is intention and belief. That is 90% of the game. So this isn't something you want to half-ass, essentially. So how do you do it? Well, if you're sitting in meditation, a simple way to anchor your consciousness in your heart is to imagine that there is a glowing ball of golden light in the middle of your head. And just set the intention that that golden ball of light represents your consciousness, where you are in your physical body. Now, the second step is to imagine you're stepping into that golden ball. Like it's a glass elevator. You're stepping into this golden ball inside your head so that you can actually see out of it. And then start to allow that golden ball to move slowly downward. So you're going to start to drop it downward. So you're going to go past the back of your nose. You're going to go past the back of your teeth, your jawbones, and imagine that you can see every part of your body as you move down through it. Now, why in the world would we do that? There's a very important thing that happens as you visualize that you're looking out through this ball. And what happens is it makes sure that you're actually moving your consciousness and not being fooled by the mind, because the mind will like to play a little trick here where it makes you think you're shifting your consciousness while you're really not, which means nothing is happening. So as you drop this golden ball down, imagine that you're seeing the inside of your body as it goes. That you can see every vertebrae as you move down your neck. And you're going to slide that golden ball down, down, down into your chest until it lands and comes to a stop inside your physical heart. So imagine then, as it comes to a stop, that you're actually looking out from inside your heart. Because it is crucial in order to do this properly that you've actually shifted your consciousness. You're not just in the mind thinking about the heart. Very, very different. So a good way to double check this is to imagine you're looking out from inside that golden ball. And you want to make sure that it looks like you're looking out from inside your chest. If you do this, if you look out through the golden ball through your mind's eye and you're still looking out through your eyes, you haven't shifted. So that's why it's always a great idea to pretend you're in the elevator, actually moving down through your body, because this is actually shifting your point of consciousness within yourself. You're just moving yourself around within your body. Then once you get to that point where you're looking out and it's like you're looking out through your rib cage, then you have anchored yourself in your heart. So that is the process in a nutshell. That's all you have to do to anchor in your heart. But it's very, very easy to get this wrong. So now let's take a moment and talk about how do you know if you've done it properly? Because the ego mind will like to play games with you. And again, the ego mind doesn't like that you're practicing this new tool. So what happens to a lot of people as they start to use this tool is that they're actually staying in the mind and they're just thinking about their heart. And what happens in that case is nothing is happening. You are still seated in the mind. So how do you know if you've done it properly? Well, the best way to double check yourself as you have gotten in that elevator, you're standing in it inside your heart, is to look around and notice how it feels. Now, knowing whether you've done this successfully is all about feeling. It is all about sensation. That's how you will know that you're not just being played with by your mind. So to know if you've done this properly, start to feel into the energy while you are seated in the heart. And so while you're down there in that golden ball in the center of your chest, If you've done it right, you will now be seated in your heart. You will have shifted your consciousness from the mind into the heart. So how do you double check yourself? Well, you're going to want to feel what it feels like to be in your heart space, because you're going to notice certain things if you've done this properly. The first, you're going to notice it is completely silent. If you have seated yourself in your heart successfully, it is going to be almost completely quiet. You may hear your heart beating, you may hear the sound of movement within your body, but there is zero mental chit-chat. So if you start to feel into the energy of your heart as you are seated there and your mind is still yapping at you, you haven't done it. So you want to go back and try it again, because the heart is very, very still, very, very quiet and peaceful. So that's one of the first signs that you're going to look for to see if you've done this properly. Now, the second thing you're going to notice if you have seated yourself in your heart successfully is the feeling of it, that it just feels completely relaxed. You're going to start to feel the physical body relaxing. You're going to start to feel a sense for many people of love or peace or well-being. And again, this is a sign that you have exited all the drama of the ego mind. So look to see, how does the energy feel as you're seated in your heart? It's going to tell you whether you've done it properly or not. And again, if you're still feeling a lot of stress, if you're still feeling a lot of anxiety, then all that tells you is that you haven't quite gotten it. This is not something you are going to master on the first try. It seems so easy, but it's actually fairly difficult to do this properly. Now, another little problem area that crops up as we do this is that we do it properly. Get in the heart, we're anchored there, we're nice and still and calm and peaceful, and then we immediately get pulled out by the ego mind. The ego mind starts to chatter again. And all that means is we have to go back and reseat. And this is where it becomes a challenging tool, because the ego mind is pretty determined and it is not going to give up on the first try. So as soon as you get yourself anchored in the heart, at least this is how it worked for me, my ego mind would pull me right out. So again, it's really easy to get into your heart for most people. Staying there, whole nother ballgame. So this is where this tool becomes actually a very advanced spiritual practice, because we are going to be ping-ponging back and forth between the mind and the heart. And this is something we just have to retrain ourselves. This is something that you may have to do 100 times a day to get yourself recentered in your heart space. Now, over time, as you do this, it's going to get easier. You're going to be able to stay in the heart longer without getting immediately pulled out by the mind. But it's always good to know going in, this wasn't designed to be easy, because if this was easy, we wouldn't be able to stay in 3D, right? So what we are doing as we start to anchor in the heart is we are retraining our mind-body system. We are overriding thousands of years of human evolution, which has trained us to be in the mind-body system, be in the mind, especially the survival mind, right? And we are overriding that. So it's not something you're going to get on the first try, but this is something that takes us a while to master, which is why the P's have been talking to us about the importance of this for so many years now. So if you just go into this practice knowing that it's going to take you a little while to get the hang of this, to be able to stay in the heart for more than a few seconds, then you just know that that is part of the process, that you're learning a new skill essentially. So you'll be patient with yourself, because I used to get so frustrated with this tool. So this tool can be a particular challenge if you are someone who is really left brain oriented. And as a lot of y'all know, I was a lawyer my entire life. So getting out of the mind was particularly difficult. It's still a struggle for me. It's still one of the main things the P's tell me. You gotta get out of the mind. So if you are someone who comes from a very logical background, very mental, very intelligent, prepare for this to be a bit of a thing. You're gonna have to work at it a little more than the average person. And especially people who are more naturally right-brained in orientation tend to have a little easier go of it than those of us who are more left-brained. So that is how you actually do the process. Super simple, right? It is the mastering of it which is where you start to see that this is going to be a journey and not a light switch. So very simple tool, but very, very powerful. And one of the reasons that the P's wanted to go into so much depth on this today is because they say this is one of the most important things we can be doing to weather the energies that are coming up in the next month or two, because we are in for energies the likes of which we have never seen on this planet before. And in order to keep on our highest timeline, to keep out of the drama of the collapsing 3D world around us, the only way to do that is to stay in the heart. So this tool, while super simple in theory, is one of the most important things you can be doing. So it's always a good idea with this tool to practice it as often as you can, because the more you practice it, the sooner you will master it. And really, none of us have really mastered this because we wouldn't be in 3D if we had, but it is a great way to keep yourself out of some of the drama that's going on around you. Because as you stay anchored in the heart, you stay in peace, you stay in neutrality and compassion. And as you do that, you're holding your vibration. You're not being kicked around by what's happening in the world. And that's how you stay on your highest ascension timeline. We've got to be in the heart to do it. If we're in the mind, we are at the mercy of what is going on in the collective. And that's just not a pool you want to be swimming in right now, right? So this is how we get around that. So I encourage you to play around with this and start to make this part of your daily practice and just see how the body and mind respond to it. I notice as I start to do this more and more that it starts to relax the resistance I'm holding in the physical body. And for so many light workers and starseeds, y'all, we have struggled in the body. And this is one of the ways you can take a lot of that pressure off the body, because you're getting out of the pain and struggle of the mind. And you do that by anchoring in your heart. So that is A to Z, how you do it, why you should do it, and how this can be a little more challenging than you might at first think, but also why this is one of the tools that is the most important for us to know right now. So I hope this has helped you. This is what the P's wanted to share with you in today's POV. Don't forget, hit the subscribe button and the like button if you haven't done that yet. I'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.